see as many of you as possible, because I think the one weird thing about having this on Zoom is that like can't see everybody, and so it's just like a weird kind of, you know, when you're looking at folks for reactions. So I'm going to try to get as many of you on my screen while I'm still going through this presentation.
I think you can split screen. I'm not sure if you've
something like that. Yeah, I've like maximized it, so I think I can see as many of you as possible. Well, hi, it's so good to see so many familiar faces, and for those of you who have recently graduated, congratulations. For those of you that are in the midst of your career here at Georgetown, I feel for you and all the stuff you're going through and figuring out what school looks like. But my understanding is that Georgetown's done a really tremendous job with all of this. So no, I've been thinking about you, and I miss those of you who I worked with at Georgetown. As Paula said, I have a little bit of experience in this world of professional development. Part of my portfolio at the White House was to do professional development, both for the interns who came in every semester, but then also for the professional staff. So LinkedIn is something that, I'm just realizing I'm in the middle of my presentation. LinkedIn is something that, you know, came about in the middle of me working at the White House. And so it's something that I've really seen grow and expand in the last couple of years. And it's, I think people have hopefully become more cognizant of what they are putting on social media and how they are representing themselves. It has really become a tool for employers to know more about you than what's on your resume, than what's in your cover letter, and to really kind of stalk you on the other side and get to know you before you go in and interview and move along in the process. So it is, to me, your professional social media. And I think thinking about it in that way helps you to make good decisions from what you're posting, but also about how you can use it in the best way possible to maximize your portfolio online and you know, your kind of traction. So hopefully this presentation today gives you a good sense of what you can do with it, how to utilize it best. I'll try to interject some anecdotes and stories. We'll click over to my LinkedIn at some point to kind of go through a couple of things and just talk about it more. But I know there is some, there is some way on here if you have questions to like raise your hand, right? How do I see that? So I want to make sure that you guys get a chance to ask lots of questions.
Can you see the participants? Because if they click hand, then you should be able to see it over there.
Got it. Okay. Perfect. Well, we'll see if this works. All right, cool. So let's just dive right in. So what is LinkedIn and why is it important? My watch is actually giving me LinkedIn updates as we speak. Obviously, it's the world's largest professional network. It is essentially your online CV, which is an expanded version of your resume that the world now uses for professional networking. It is used most by employers who are searching for prospective employees and interns, but it can also be used by employees like yourself to connect with others, to post interesting work-related items, they have a job search site now where you can actually search for jobs, and to help you really just manage your career. So when I was starting out, the way that I kept track of everything that I accomplished and worked on and did in my jobs was in this really massive resume. And it was helpful, but I had to remember that, like, when this is before Google Docs, so this is aging me just a little bit. But you know, when I got a new computer, or if I saved it at work, or if I saved it at home, that I had to email the right version to myself. You guys probably don't have this problem anymore because Google is different. But If LinkedIn had existed, I would have been able to use this online version to keep all of that information. I'm not saying don't back it up somewhere, because the internet is not like a safeguard for all things, but it can certainly help you keep track of all of those things. So as I said, I use it as a CV to house all of my relevant experience, and I think that's a really useful tool. A CV is a much longer version of your resume and includes, you'll see when I click on mine, so much more information than I would normally put in a tailored resume for a specific job experience. And so it's a great place to house all of that. It also allows you to be the top result on a Google search when you search your name. So the last slide we have is how to change your LinkedIn URL to be your first name, last name, so that you're easily searchable. But it means that when someone types in Jennifer Fay, one of the top results will be my LinkedIn profile. I don't have any other things on the internet that would make it questionable as to why or what I'm doing. But if you had a long high school soccer career and then a college one and all those things, maybe those are your top searches, it can be a hassle for an employer to have to scroll through all those to find you. If you use LinkedIn, it will be your top search, and it will be a very easy way for them to track down all your stuff. It's a great way to connect with previous employers and staff, even if people change jobs. You guys are going to get into the real world, or those of you that are master students and already working, and people are going to come and go from workplaces, and they're going to send around this like very lovely email that says, please keep in contact with me, and they're going to give you contact information. That information may or may not stay forever, right? Because maybe you change your Gmail, maybe you give some sort of defunct email, maybe you give a phone number, and then phone numbers don't change very often anymore, but maybe it does change. LinkedIn is a great place to connect with those folks. They have a messaging center on there where you can message them. I primarily use LinkedIn when I need to get in touch with someone that I've not emailed personally before, and I don't have their personal email address. It's just an easy, fast way to do that. And it allows you to stay in contact, see what they're up to, see how your networks continue to overlap, and keep you connected in the professional world. It can also obviously help you connect to new individuals. I know that Georgetown has a similar site that they allow people to opt into, and then you can connect with people that go to Georgetown or recent grads or alums. But LinkedIn does all of that and lets you pick your school and all of that. So you can, you can search Georgetown University and look at everyone who is somehow tangentially related to you, right? A second or a third connection to potentially connect with them. So maybe you're looking for a job at the State Department. You can search for people who work at the State Department who went to Georgetown. Great, easy way to connect with new individuals who may be able to help you find opportunities. So let's keep going here. Basics of LinkedIn. There are just a couple of sections in LinkedIn. It's a pretty easy website to navigate. I'm sure most of you have been on it before, so you know what it looks like. But there's your feed, which is just like your Facebook or your Instagram feed. It's where people post things regularly. You can see updates about jobs and who's moved around and people posting interesting articles and things like that. There's your profile itself. There's your network, so all the people that you're connected to. The messaging center, which I noted already, and then a jobs board. They have like apps, obviously, that you can use. For some reason, maybe this is different now. When I downloaded them, there were two separate apps between jobs and your Facebook feed or your LinkedIn feed, which I think is kind of silly. That may be different now, but it's a easy, quick way to look, and lots of employers are using it more and more to post potential positions. All right. So hopefully this is 10 easy steps to make a great LinkedIn profile. I will try to not go on too long about each of them, but if you have a question on something, like I said, just raise your hand in the middle of it. I would rather you ask me a question when I'm on the slide. and talk about it then try to go back to the slide, especially because we're on Zoom, at the end of the conversation. And so feel free, raise your hand, ask me questions in the middle. All right, so the first thing is writing an informative headline. So if you've been to any of my other sessions, and we talked about resumes before, I do not think that it's necessary to have a objectives line on your resume. I think it takes up space, and most of the time your objective is to find a job. That's why you have a resume. So it's not, in my opinion, necessary on your resume. However, on LinkedIn, I do think it's helpful to have some sort of short, memorable, professional slogan that you can use to help kind of distinguish yourself. So there's a couple of examples that I've seen on people's LinkedIn profiles. So things like recent graduate looking for entry-level position in government. Quick, short, nothing, you know, special about it, but it gives people a really good sense of, from the top, what you're actually looking to do, versus, you know, they go to your LinkedIn profile, they read through the whole thing. Remember that recruiters use LinkedIn. So I get 1 to 2 emails a week from recruiters who say they've seen my LinkedIn profile and would I be interested in talking to them about X, Y, and Z. So recruiters are using that site, using LinkedIn to find people. I mean, that's their job, and LinkedIn is a great place to do it. So making that top headline as easy to read and quick as possible is a great way to, you know, start it off. All right, moving right along. Second step, pick an appropriate photo. Everyone has a smart camera these days, a smartphone, that they can take an easy photo. So your homework for all of this is to get someone that you are quarantining with, or set up your self timer to take a professional photo of yourself. It's quick, it's easy. You know, if you have an iPhone 11 or whatever and above, have the portrait mode, which makes it super easy. But you cannot have a LinkedIn profile with a picture you posted on Instagram of you at a bar. It's just not going to work. So photos where you are the only person in it, do not take a photo that you have to cut someone else out of. It just doesn't look very professional. Obviously, professional context. I always think that today in DC, I know you guys aren't all in DC, but today in DC is like the perfect day to take photos because it is overcast. It's not 1,000 degrees yet. So an, you know, overcast day outside with something very benign in the background that is easy to do. Obviously, if you are, you know, near campus, taking pictures at Georgetown is an easy place to do that. I actually think back in Dahlgren Quad is always a very lovely area because it's like green and lush, but not busy. I love the front of Healy, but it can be a little busy in the background. So a professional setting is really great, and professional clothing. So Noah was stating when he saw on that he was not wearing a t-shirt that is not featured you know, humble like dress, something like that. Whatever makes you feel comfortable and makes you feel, you know, good in your photo is going to come across when you smile and you take that photo. So obviously those are just some silly screen captures that I literally pulled off the internet from other people's LinkedIn profiles. But I do think that starting off with that photo is really the best first or best second step, I suppose. All right. So next on your profile, you're going to show your education. This doesn't need, I mean, you literally fill in the blanks, right? I don't need to go through line by line and tell you exactly how to do that. But I do want to note that you need to highlight your accomplishments. So as I've mentioned, and I will continue to drill this in, LinkedIn is such a great place to house all of your information. And while you are in undergrad and grad school, it is very helpful to keep track of these things, because I am now 15 years, yes, 15 years out of grad school, and more than that out of college. And I do not remember what I did. Guys, if you don't write it down, you will forget, as hard as you try not to. So keeping track of clubs and things you've written, your extracurriculars. Obviously, I'm going to rep geopolitics here for anyone who's involved in all the awesome things that they do. Is just such a great way to keep track of all of those accomplishments. So it's also something where, again, if you've taken my resume workshop, you've heard me say that, you know, once you get out of high school and are in college, you don't need to be listing, you know, all of the key club and the honors things that you did in high school. When you get out of college, that section in your resume is going to get very short. It's going to say university, graduation date, major, and if you graduate with honors. And that's really all it's going to say. So LinkedIn is a place where you can add and include all of those things. It's also a great place where if you've been on the newspaper or written for geopolitics or anything that's going to be online, that you can link it very easily. And that's not something you can convey in a resume or a application for a job. But here is a place where you can actually just link that information very quickly, and it's very easy for someone to click on it, read an article you wrote, you know, for the paper, and see what your capabilities are. So keeping track of those things on your profile is a great place to do that. All right, here we go. All right, developing a professional summary. So at the top, underneath all of that information, there's a summary page for your professional experiences. This is going to be short as you're starting out, but it can continue to grow. So make sure it's concise. Make sure you sound confident in your experiences. I will especially say this for the women on the call. Be confident in the experiences that you have done so that you can speak highly of what you've actually accomplished, and don't downplay that. And think of it like a cover letter intro. So who are you? What are you all about? And what do you hope to do? Pretty easy, maybe 3 sentences that includes all of that information, but gives people a really good intro into your professional experience. All right, so I'm not going to read through all of these, but you can take a look while I'm talking. I just think it's a really great place to highlight maybe your most recent experience and the kind of big things you did in that, but also, you know, any other integrated experiences you've had, things like you've done, like that first one has the example of experiences at Georgetown, how many years of experience you have overall. Right? So if you have been doing data acquisition for 15 years, you can put that right at the top. You know, if you've completed any major like professional development courses or things like that, put it right at the top. All right, so then there's so you're gonna get past all of your, you're going to get past all of your professional experiences, and I'll go through mine in a little bit and you can see how I filled that out. But you're going to get to the skills and endorsements section. So who has applied to a job in the federal government through USA Jobs? Yeah, it's like a big black hole, right? It uses keyword computer searches to help the computer basically drill down the best candidates, or the candidates that meet the qualifications of the job position, before a human starts to look at it. Well, the same is going to be true with anything on the internet, right? And LinkedIn is no exception. So using buzzwords or keywords from jobs that you are interested in, from the types of work that you want to do in the skills and endorsement section especially can also help just bring your profile to the top of someone's queue. So what do I mean by that? In skills and endorsements, there's a section for someone that's connected to you to be able to endorse you, to be able to write on your behalf. It's basically providing you a job reference. If you ask them to do that, you can feel free to ask them to make sure to highlight these 2 points. And maybe those 2 points include, you know, something that you think is particularly important to the type of field you want to go into. Now, that word, those buzzwords are in your profile. So when someone searches for those buzzwords, because they're searching for people who have X, Y, and Z skills for their jobs, your profile is going to come up. And it's not just you putting it in your profile, it's someone else endorsing you, someone else providing a reference for you. All right. So I have these in a weird order, which is why I was confused before. So when it comes to experiences, as I mentioned before, you're going to want to use it like a CV, a long form resume. So a place to keep all your relevant professional experiences and accomplishments and pull from there when you're building specific resumes for specific jobs. So if I were applying to a job that was more management based, I would include much more of my management experience in place and pull from it there. Just a very easy way to do that. Just a couple of notes. Obviously, make sure the dates and the titles are all accurate. It can be a little complicating when you have had multiple jobs at the same organization. So if you've had, you know, 3 or 4 promotions or things like that, how do you put that in your LinkedIn profile? I'll show you in a minute because I've had that happen. But make sure that all those titles and dates are accurate. I say that because the internet is an easy place for people to see what you're posting. So if you overstate what you've done, say you were a staff assistant on the Hill, but you did a lot of policy work and you really thought, you know, people thought of you more as a policy assistant, but that wasn't actually your title. If you put on there that you were a policy assistant because maybe you did some work with the LA on the, you know, on the issues before your member, and you got to get some of those experiences, but you didn't actually get that promotion to be a policy assistant. Say the LA is one of your references and they go to search for you and they see that you've listed policy assistant. The most oftentimes I've seen this is when you were an intern and people overstate what they did in their internship as if they had worked full time for that office. I don't mean to say that, you know, the experiences that you had in some of these more junior level positions aren't very informative and incredibly helpful and beneficial to the organization. As someone who has worked almost completely in public service, we could not get by without people who come into these entry level roles. I got my start in an entry level role. I was a staff assistant on the Hill in my first job, and did plenty of internship back in the day. But if you overstate that and someone sees that, it can put a bad taste in their mouth, especially for those of you who plan to continue your careers here in DC. DC is a really small town. Those of you who know me have heard me say that before. People who work in politics, be it Democrat, Republican, nonpartisan, nonprofit world, you know, in the contractor, consultant world, we all know each other. So if you overstate something on your resume, on LinkedIn, it can and often will get back to folks and it doesn't look good. So make sure that those things are accurate. And you can always explain what you did in your experiences in the bullet points below, but just make sure your titles and the dates are obviously accurate. As I already mentioned, in your education experiences, adding links and articles and videos and reports enhances your description. So please make sure to do that. Don't worry that you're adding too much stuff to LinkedIn. LinkedIn is where you should be adding all that stuff. So if you are published, if you have done, you know, videos for I don't know, classes that are on the internet and they are professional videos and they can show your experience and enhance what you're putting on LinkedIn. Include those. It's absolutely helpful to have all of that stuff in one place for a potential employer. All right. Lastly, no, well, maybe not lastly, but just a couple of notes. I had this happen to me, which is why I always make note of this. Turn off the updates section on your LinkedIn profile so that every time you do update something, like say you're creating your LinkedIn and you've built it and then you decide like 2 weeks later to go back in and add like 3 or 4 other experiences, or you change your education stuff around. If you don't turn off the updates, everyone who's in your network will get an email every time you make a change. Not like, oh, you made 35 changes today, like 35 emails. You don't want to have that happen. It's very awkward. I had it happen to me. So there's a very easy way in LinkedIn to turn off those updates so that you can make a whole bunch of changes. I would say that if you have something big and exciting and you want to make sure people know about it, right? You get some new job or you graduate, things like that, it's fine to turn the updates back on so that update goes out. But if you're going to be making a whole bunch of regularly scheduled updates, make sure that those are turned off. But make sure you're, like I said, including updates to your relevant professional information, any comments on, things that are on LinkedIn. So LinkedIn has that feed section on your front profile page. You can see what other people are including. So if you're giving kudos to someone for a job anniversary, or if you're adding an article about something interesting you saw for your field, do those things regularly because it helps you to stay current on what's on LinkedIn, but it also keeps your feed kind of updated. Showing your connectedness. So make sure that just like you can do on Facebook now, you can join relevant organization pages and they show up at the bottom of your profile. So you can get updates from them and you can know when they're posting new jobs and things like that. But it can also keep you connected to those communities, right? So Georgetown has one. I'm sure McCourt School has one. I'm sure SFS has one. Staying connected through all of those organization pages is a really easy way for you to continually see what's going on. Collecting diverse recommendations. So you can ask so I talked about endorsements, which is like these little quick quips about people. There's also like an actual recommendations page. So you can ask former supervisors to write recommendations for you. It can help you gain credibility and also keep those contacts together if you ever need a physical recommendation or reference. So one thing that college students often don't think about is you graduate, you had a tremendous experience at Georgetown, you've had the best professors in the whole wide world, and you swear you're going to keep in touch with them because maybe you want to go to grad school one day. But then 3 years, 4 years, 5 years down the line, you decide you actually want to go to grad school and you realize you haven't actually kept in touch with any of them. And now you need a reference, a recommendation from a educational institution about you. If you're 5 years out, that's really hard for that professor, even if you were the best student possible. So LinkedIn is a great place to, when you are graduating or when you are leaving a job, ask people for those recommendations so that you can stay in touch with them on LinkedIn. And then when you need to use them as a reference or to write a recommendation for you, they've already done part of the work for you. It's very easy to keep to look back at that. All right, this might be the very end. Claiming a unique URL. So I mentioned that you can use, that LinkedIn allows you to make a unique URL for yourself so that when you post, so that when you use that URL on something, it is not, linkedin.com/75 numbers that don't make any sense. It can be linkedin.com/Jennifer-Fay. So it's easy to search for you. This is how you actually do it. So you can take a screenshot of this. Paula also has this and can email it around. It's not any rocket science. I literally Googled how to do it, so I didn't like come up with this. But it is a very easy way to make sure that then when you include your LinkedIn profile on your resume, which would be another thing I would recommend doing. You know, nowadays, it is widely understood that you don't necessarily need your physical address on your resume, because people are mobile, jobs are teleworking, not just because of COVID, but even before that people are willing to move, especially here in DC. I would not think twice about putting my address on my resume, except for if I was applying to a job in a member's office that was from that state, and I wanted to be very cognizant that I was from that state. But putting your LinkedIn profile link is a really easy way for someone to see that you have a LinkedIn profile, what it is, and be able to go and look at all of those amazing things. So making your URL unique allows you to do that. All right. So let's actually go look at LinkedIn. Everyone can see my LinkedIn. So this is my feed. This is where everyone can see, you know, all of the folks that I'm connected to make posts about things. I want to make a quick note about this, and today is an interesting day to make this note given everything that's going on the internet today. But I think of LinkedIn as my professional social media, as I mentioned at the top. So I don't use it like I do Instagram. I don't really use Facebook, but if I did, like I would use Facebook, or certainly like Twitter is. I use it to post professional things about my job, when I was at Georgetown, about things happening at Georgetown. And I don't use it as a commentary on social matters. I say that with an incredible understanding that what is going on right now is very overlapped. And I don't know that I wouldn't use LinkedIn to also express my personal views on what's happening in the world right now. But I'm not going to log on here and start railing against the way that Congress is, you know, doing X, Y, and Z, or what's currently happening with the protests. It's just not how I'm going to use LinkedIn. That doesn't mean on my other feeds, if someone looked me up on Instagram, I mean, I'm private on Instagram, but if you tried to look me up on Instagram, you couldn't see those things about what's going on. But I use LinkedIn in a very, very professional way. So I almost never post anything unless it's about personnel, HR, that's what I do now, management and operations stuff, because that's how I've chosen to use it. I think that it's a professional network. And so the people that I am personally connected to, that I use, you know, my other social media for, I obviously use it for my personal needs. So just so you guys understand that the types of things I usually see in my feed are, you know, congratulations for positions. You guys will see first time people as I scroll through some of this, which will be funny. And things like that. There are other people that obviously use it for other means, but that is how I've chosen to use it. All right. So my profile, talked about this, talked about a professional photo. They have all of these metrics now on LinkedIn that tell you like how good your profile is. I obviously don't have like the, you know, top star profile, because I don't have like 75 endorsements and a whole bunch of other stuff. But it's a lot of random metrics that are on here now. But you can also include things like if you are open to jobs, show recruiters that. You can add other contact information. I just prefer to have people reach out to me on LinkedIn if they want to get in touch with me. I get push notifications, so it's not really a big deal. But you could add other contact information. Obviously, your current positions are all going to be up here. And then as you scroll down, you'll see all of your other experiences. So the one thing I did want to show you guys was one, that I do not take my own advice, so don't listen to me. Listen to what I said and not include any current job information on here. That is partly because when I got my current job at Citizen Congress, I didn't apply to it. It was a different situation. And so I didn't have to update my LinkedIn profile in order to get my resume ready to go apply to new jobs. I should update this so that I can write the cool stuff that I got to do with you guys at Georgetown. So I will do that one day. But what I do want to show you is just a couple of things. So my experience at the White House, I mentioned that there are ways to include all of your previous jobs. So I had 3 job titles at the White House. And instead of including all of my experiences under each of them, because they were basically promotions into the same role, but to do more work, I just included all of my experiences in my top one. It does do a really good job of, if you have had more than one job, showing your total amount of time that you worked, which I find really helpful for folks. But I wanted to just show you guys that I would never include all this information on a resume. That's a huge, I mean, it's a whole page of information. So even for someone who's been working for 20 or 30 years, that would be a lot more information on your resume than you'd want to include. But LinkedIn is a great place to have all of that. And then, like I said, I could come and pull out a couple of these bullets if the job I was applying to had particular things about, managing an internship program, or, updating policies or things like that. The same is true with, this is shorter. Obviously, I spent less time here and only had one job, but the same is true. This is also a very long section for bullet points. I mentioned, obviously, your education stuff is on there. I love that all of you are asking me to connect on LinkedIn. I keep getting buzzes. The skills and endorsements. Apparently, there's a new skill quiz. I haven't done that. And then part of the reason I'm not a superstar on LinkedIn is because I don't have recommendations. Like I said, LinkedIn started to exist after I was out of school and after I was out of some of my first jobs. I would highly recommend you guys use these sections, because recruiters and potential employers are looking at these, especially for folks who are starting out in their career. So if you're in your early 20s. And then, interests and other groups that I'm connected to. I remember connecting to the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation back when I was looking for jobs at some point. Obviously, my current employer at Citizen Congress, my alumni schools, and then other alumni organizations from the Obama administration. So that's all of that. I talked about this job section. I'll just show it to you. It works just like any other jobs searching search section. It does give you some suggested searches, which I think are interesting, and obviously lets you, narrow it down by location, which is also helpful. But it's a great place because it's also then just all in one place, and everything you need, you can actually apply to jobs through LinkedIn. So it's all connected, which I think is really helpful. I think those are all the things I wanted to tell you. So I feel like I talked really fast and gave you a lot of things, but I want to make sure we have time left over if you have questions that you ask me. So Noah, is that a hand raise?
It is indeed.
Okay.
Is now time for questions, I guess?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. So I'm not a huge social media user in the first place. Could you maybe go over more specifically what the contents of a LinkedIn update like that you're writing would be to try and engage more with your network?
Absolutely. So I use it most often to link to maybe an article that I've read about something that is in my field. So maybe, the Washington Post did an article about, I don't know, something about the way the White House, management team does X, Y, and Z. And I thought it was particularly interesting. So I'll include that link. Or right now, because, and I'll just do a shameless plug for my new job. What we're doing at Citizen Congress is trying to get people to download our app. I've been trying to use my network to get the word out about that. So our app just went live into the App Store last week, and so we've been working hard on getting good feedback on our first version 1. And so I would absolutely use it for that. Now, we are a team of 6 people that are doing that. So it's a little different than like when I was working for the federal government. I would have never made a post about like, look at this cool report that we just submitted to Congress. That would be absolutely frowned upon in the jobs that I've had before. But, at Georgetown, I would have used it to highlight what students are doing, or maybe sessions like this that we were having, things like that. But you can also use it just to post back to people. So I'm trying to find like an example. I have not, obviously, given what's going on right now, had a lot of time to do other things. But, if someone posted something like they got a really cool new job, or, there was something inspiring or really interesting, I think it's a good way, if you post back, it'll populate at the top of your feed and populate at the top of others' feeds. So I think it's a cool way to be able to use it for that. So does that help?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much.
Okay, cool. All right. Other questions? There we go.
Like my sort of things would be like this, for really awkward treatment to people that you've never talked to before, but also like what kind of things would like you not message on like a LinkedIn message?
So that's a great question. I use LinkedIn messaging about the industry that they're in, or maybe we're connected through like 2 other people. And so I have some sort of connection to them. So I would use it to email them. I'm trying to find maybe a good example of that. So say, for example, like this is my friend Olivia. I was asking her if she would be a mentor for Georgetown. I haven't talked to her in a long time. And she and I used to work together, but it's an easy way for me to message her and ask her for like a favor like that. Cold emailing someone is always awkward. It's never not going to be awkward. But if you frame it as a quick and flattering thing, people are more likely to respond to you. So, hey, I'm a Georgetown student, or I'm a recent grad, and I saw that you work at blah, blah, blah. Would you ever be interested in, grabbing coffee right now is hard, but like doing a phone call to talk more about your experiences? Make the request as low bar for them as possible. So don't ask them to like sit down for 3 hours and tell you their entire life story. Would you have time for a quick 15 to 30-minute call so I could pick your brain on this? If you make it as easy on them as possible and you are as flattering as possible, more than likely people will respond to you. You're not going to get 100% response rate. So if you send out 10, you might get 3 responses, but 3 responses is still pretty decent. Mm-hmm. So I would use it in that way. The other ways you can use it for are if you are trying to track down information about other people. So maybe you want to get connected with someone who worked for so-and-so on the Hill, and you are connected to someone who is connected to them. you can always email them or message them through LinkedIn and ask if they would be willing to reach out to that person and see if they would connect with you. So, I've used it certainly that way, to email a friend of mine to say, hey, you're connected to so-and-so at, this foundation, and I would love to talk with them. Would you be comfortable asking if I could reach out to them? Or would you be comfortable talking to them and then connecting us over email or LinkedIn or whatever it is, so that you could be connected that way? I think that's a really easy way to do it.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
Yeah,
I have this
if you need
question
it.
regarding
They're open.
certifications and courses.
Uh-huh.
I mean, I've seen some profiles that include like almost every online course they've taken and language certifications, but what do you think is like the most important things to include? Like, I mean, I had this teacher that was focused on public health. So he included a lot of certifications in public health, but then he started to include some certifications on politics, economics. So his profile was quite diversified. So what's your recommendation on that chapter of our LinkedIn profile?
I think that if you have a certification, something, putting it on your LinkedIn profile, as many of them as you have, is totally fine. I think when you go to apply to a specific job, so say, for example, the teacher that you had, say they were applying to a job that was focused just on public health, I wouldn't include all the other public service or public policy ones, because the public health ones are the ones you're going to want to highlight on your resume. But not certification, and he worked on a report for the legislature that they went to the governor about substance abuse. And that is not something I do now. It's something that I think is incredibly important. And had worked writing this report and doing in any more than a line that says, like, coordinated the writing of blah blah blah. But there's a link to it on my profile. I'm not going to take that down if I'm applying to a job at Georgetown, which has nothing to do with that, because it does show my writing skills, my organization skills, my management skills. But it's a great place for me to be able to house that there. So I don't think you can have too much. I mean, your page can get a little long, but I don't think that it's something where you wouldn't want to be able to scroll. And like I said, when you are on it, it allows you to, like, all of these things are minimized. And so if you do have a ton of information in a specific place, it'll minimize it, so the person has to click on it. So it's not like they're like scrolling and scrolling and scrolling for days.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Good question. Anybody else? Yes. So Eric, and then the gentleman who has his headphones on, whose name I can't see, I'm sorry, can be next.
All right. So my question has to do with the section that says volunteer experience, because I've seen a lot of different people handle that. I've seen some people put, like, if they were like a volunteer in a gubernatorial campaign or a presidential campaign, put their experience there. I've also seen some people put their extracurriculars from college, like if they were involved with student Model UN, but I put what do you think is the best approach? Is it a balance, or is it like putting it in one place or the other?
I think that if it's a school-related experience, other than if it's like a job you had on campus, like an actual paying job, putting those extracurriculars in your school section, in your education section, helps to sort them out. So I would if I saw someone's profile, and Noah's the third one on this list today, so I'm going to pick on him all day. If Noah's profile said that his work experience included being Suzanne Kiampour's team lead, I would think that Noah was paid and working full time doing that job. And I'm not downgrading that what Noah did was tremendous, but he wasn't paid and it wasn't a full-time job. And so I want to see experiences that are that level, or at least a part-time job, where that was the experience. So I would consider that example as being an extracurricular. Likewise, volunteer experience. Volunteering on a campaign is just a very specific thing to this world we live in here in DC. No one else really understands what that means. And we all know that that experience entails a tremendous amount of work and hours and blood, sweat, and tears. And it is probably very different than volunteering at your church on the weekend, or, you know, reading to children at a local school every Tuesday. So it's hard to figure out what that balance is. But if you were not a paid campaign worker, it still was a volunteer role. And so I think having that in a volunteer section where it's very clear, but you're very clear about what you did. So if you volunteered 40 hours a week and you went to 3 states and you knocked on 3,000 doors, quantify that information so that it's not just volunteered for I don't play
Thank you.
headphones. See,
Hi,
when your name
my
pops
name's-
up, now I can see your name is Julian. I don't know why that's doing that.
Yeah. Well, I was born headphones actually. But I was wondering, you're talking about keywords, and like it logically makes sense, but it's difficult to, at least to my mind, to do in practice. How do you find keywords for the work that is most interesting to you, and how do you incorporate them organically into your profile? I mean, assuming that they apply, obviously.
Yeah.
And kind of last one, are there any kind of good, useful, generally applicable keywords that you see be useful in a lot of contexts?
Absolutely. Okay, so fantastic questions. To your first question, I would look at job descriptions for positions that you're interested in. These are both positions that you're interested in right now, but then also just look at job descriptions for your reach job. Like if your dream job is to go be Secretary of State, find the job description for that. I don't think there is one, but find the job description and look at those things. So those are found on USA Jobs. They're found on jobs boards. If you want to go work on the Hill, you should be subscribing to the House Employment Bulletin. The Senate's, I think, is just on their website, but the jobs are posted there. I mean, even if you are applying to some of these jobs, if they're not through traditional job places, right? You're not getting recruited and doing an online application through a traditional place like Google, you can still look for them. So take a look at them, read what they list as the applicable skills that are necessary, and then figure out how your skills match. So I do the exact same thing when I go in for a job interview. So when I get a job interview, I take the job description and I go through and I highlight all the applicable skills. And then in the margins of it, I write down how my skills relate to those. So if the position says that you are required to coordinate, you know, projects with high-level executives, I'm thinking off the cuff here, I would highlight that coordinate and high-level executives. And then the margins, I would write about my experience, do Georgetown, in coordinating the fellows program, which was with high-level political folks. So that for me, I know when I go into that job interview that I'm going to try to tie those two things together. But the same is do for LinkedIn. So do the same exact thing when you're going to write your experiences. That's how you're going to write them, keywords. There is, I mean, it's action verbs usually, but then it also is, you know, some standard things about communications and interpersonal skills, about your management style, each word, they're kind of found everywhere. You can start to build into your resume and into your LinkedIn profile. So, you know, relationship building, if you're applying to a job in, you know, the like civic world or the public service world, any words around like coalition building or your, you know, interpersonal skills and how you work best with others, things like that. You can look at organizations' websites for, so say your like dream is to go work for, I don't know, I'm drawing a blank right now, like the Red Cross or something, large nonprofit. Go to the Red Cross's website and read their mission statement, read their other employees' profiles, right? Most websites have a page about us. So if you want to go work for, you know, Bully Pulpit, go read all of the people who work at Bully Pulpit and see their experiences, and then take those, look at them and think about, okay, well, what types of experiences have I had that either mirror that or that are similar, or that I need to figure out how to get those and start to put those into your LinkedIn.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Other questions? Aida.
Hi. This is
Hi.
just
You're so
just a really quick question about, like, I know it's quarantine season. Yeah, it's a whole thing. I was wondering, like, should you be describing your place of work on your LinkedIn? Like, for example, if you say you work at like Georgetown, I think like a lot of people know where Georgetown is, so you don't have to explain it to university. But if you work at like geopolitics as a student, should you be explaining like what the institute does before you get into your like specific experience?
It's an excellent question, and it's actually one I've been trying to figure out because my new job is just that. Yes, I do think if you're working at an organization that people wouldn't necessarily recognize, you can absolutely include a quick one line about what the organization is. I will say one thing about LinkedIn that is not ideal is they do not link very easily. So like if you click on the Citizen Congress page, it doesn't necessarily go to like the right place initially. And so it's kind of confusing. So I do think a quick one line, you know, like in my situation, you know, I'm working for a civic minded startup to promote, you know, better public engagement, something like that. And so having a quick blurb is helpful. Geopolitics, if you don't write out the Georgetown Institute of Politics and Public Service, I would include an explanation of it. But if you write out that long, what our full name is, I don't think you actually have to explain it, because most people will see that. And nowadays there are so many IOPs and organizations like Geopolitics that most people will understand what you did. But just so you know, that's what I would do.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Hi, I had a quick question.
Yeah.
So how would you approach if a recruiter messages you on LinkedIn? How much of skepticism do you go into it? Like, what are some contents you share or don't share? How would you go about that?
So that's a great question. I approach most things with a healthy dose of skepticism, just because I think that that's how I've been trained. But I would do a little bit of Googling before you reply to them and see what the organization is they work for. Usually they should give you that information, right? I'm so-and-so and I work for X organization and we're hiring for this role. You can go and look and see if that organization is in fact hiring, because usually they're still posted somewhere. And then honestly, like, giving them your phone number is not going to be the end of the world, and having a conversation with someone over the phone, I think, is a better way to tell if someone's being real or if it's a scam. So I'm always inclined to say, like, I'm happy to jump on a call and talk to you more about this. I would not give them my email, my personal email, just because I don't know. I try to keep my personal email. I'm jobs. But I think most people, by and large, are using it for the right reasons. I mean, I don't think that there's a whole lot of like scamming people to get their like personal information for really nefarious acts. I mean, there certainly could be some like weird catfishing thing happening that, you know, maybe there's like an underground world of doing that. But I think for the most part, people are, you know, being positive about it. I think if you're genuinely not interested, you should just tell them up front though, because you're wasting both of your time. But if you are interested, I think doing your research and your homework before you get back to them is just a quick way to, like, you know, make sure they're legit. Just search their LinkedIn profile and see who they are.
Just a follow-up question on that. What if they
I would not give someone my resume. I don't know why it feels like my resume is different, but you're right. It does have your contact information on it. And it's a weird way to ask on a website that already has all that information. So then I would be a little bit skeptical of who they are and what they want.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, so just to be mindful of everybody's time, we'll wrap it up here. And if anybody has any other questions, Jenny, I'm sure you would still be willing if I were to connect them with you to
absolutely
ask any follow-up questions.
I'm also happy to hang out for a couple minutes. I don't have a meeting until 2:30. If you guys are interested in what I'm doing now, Citizen Congress is a new app that, as I mentioned, just came out last week. So we are a new way to let your member of Congress know how you feel about issues before them. So unlike the current system where